You are exhausted, not from working too hard, not from sleeping too little. You are exhausted from trying to know everything before you move. Before every decision, you want more information. Before every action, another round of planning. And somehow, no matter how much you prepare, the ground keeps shifting. The answer you found yesterday no longer fits today. The plan you built with so much care quietly collapses, and you are left standing in the rubble of your own certainty, wondering what went wrong. Here is what nobody tells you. The exhaustion does not come from not knowing enough. It comes from believing that you should. Modern life has made certainty a religion. We worship data, strategies, experts, and systems. We treat confusion as a malfunction, a sign that we are falling behind. The moment we feel lost, we panic. We Google. We ask everyone around us. We do anything to escape the discomfort of not knowing. But what if confusion is not the enemy? What if it is the entrance? Ancient wisdom says yes. The Taoists discovered something radical, something that flies directly against everything your school, your culture, and your career ever taught you. They discovered that the mind willing to not know is a mind capable of receiving far more than the mind convinced it already does. Stay with this. Think about the last time you felt genuinely curious. Not curious in the way you research a product before buying it. Genuinely curious. Open. Alive to possibility. That state, that feeling of wide-eyed not knowing, has a name in Taoist philosophy. It is called Wuji. Wuji means no knowledge, or not knowing. Do not confuse it with ignorance. Ignorance is not knowing and not caring. Wuji is something entirely different. It is the deliberate release of the need to have a fixed answer. It is standing at the edge of a question and choosing to stay there, rather than grabbing the nearest comfortable response and calling it truth. Notice what happens to your mind when you do that. Laozi, the ancient sage who wrote the Tao Te Ching, placed this idea at the center of his teaching. In chapter 71, he wrote, "To know yet think one does not know is the highest." He was not praising stupidity. He was praising epistemic humility, the awareness that your map is never the territory. Here is the problem with knowledge as we usually use it. Knowledge categorizes, it labels, it says, this is safe, that is dangerous, this is correct, that is wrong. And in doing so, it quietly freezes the world. It turns a living, breathing, constantly shifting reality into a fixed diagram. And then we spend our lives reacting not to the world as it is, but to the diagram we drew of it years ago. The Zhuangzi, the second great classic of Taoism, calls this the fasting of the mind. To empty the mind of its accumulated conclusions is not to become less. It is to become available. Available to what is actually here, right now, in this moment, before your labels arrived. Stop trying to be the one with all the answers. The river does not know where it is going, and it always reaches the sea. Many centuries ago, a great Sufi poet named Jalaluddin Rumi told a story so precise, so quietly devastating, that it has survived 700 years without losing a single drop of its meaning. It goes like this: a grammarian, a scholar of language and syntax, a man who had spent his entire life mastering the rules of correct speech, stepped into a small wooden boat. The boatman, a simple man with weathered hands and a calm face, took up his oars. Almost immediately, the scholar turned to the boatman and asked, with barely concealed superiority, "Have you ever studied grammar?" The boatman looked up. "No," he said simply. The grammarian shook his head with visible pity. "Then half your life," he said, "has gone to waste." The boatman said nothing. He felt the sting of the words. He absorbed them in silence and kept rowing. Then the river changed. Without warning, the current grew violent. Dark waters swirled into a whirlpool beneath them. The little boat began to spin. The grammarian grabbed the sides, his face pale, his certainty dissolving. The boatman looked at him with perfect calm and asked, "Can you swim?" "No," said the scholar. "I cannot." The boatman nodded slowly. "Then your whole life," he said, "without cruelty, without victory, just with the stillness of a man who knows the river, has gone to waste, because the boat is sinking." Now understand what Rumi was really saying. The grammarian represents the part of us that believes mastery of systems equals mastery of life. He knows the rules of language. He knows how things should be named and ordered. But the river does not read grammar books. Reality does not respect your vocabulary. The boatman represents something rarer. He does not know the name for the current beneath him, but he knows the current. There is a difference. This is the psychological lesson hidden in plain sight. We confuse the map for the territory. We spend years learning to describe the river, and we mistake that description for understanding. But when the waters rise, the only knowledge that saves you is the kind that was never written down. The knowledge that lives in your hands, your instincts, your willingness to move with what is rather than what you were told to expect. Your labels cannot swim. There is a concept in Taoism called pu, the uncarved block. Imagine a piece of raw wood, freshly cut from the tree, not yet shaped into anything. No chisel has touched it. No function has been assigned. It is simply itself, full of potential, open to every possibility. The moment you carve it into a table, it becomes a table. Useful, yes, but the unlimited openness it once had is gone. Lao Tzu said the sage is like this block, not carved by ambition, not hollowed out by certainty, not forced into a fixed shape by the expectations of the world. The sage holds the question. The sage does not rush to become an answer. Now place this beside the story of the empty boat. Zhuangzi described a man rowing across a lake. Another boat comes drifting toward him. If the boat is empty, he simply adjusts his course. No irritation, no blame, no story. But if there is a person in the other boat, suddenly anger rises. Suddenly, there is a narrative. Suddenly, someone is responsible. Here is the insight that changes everything. The external world is always an empty boat. The chaos, the uncertainty, the plans that fall apart, none of it is aimed at you. It is current. It is weather. It is the river doing what rivers do. The anger, the fear, the frantic need to impose order. That is all yours. It lives inside the boat you are steering, not in the water around you. This is how you navigate chaos without a map. You do not find certainty. You release the demand for it. You become the empty boat, unresisting, unhurried, available to the current's intelligence rather than fighting it with your own. A river never asks if it is going the right way, and it always arrives. There is a difference between intelligence and wisdom that most people spend an entire life confusing, and it is not the difference you were taught in school. The intelligent person accumulates more frameworks, more answers, more certainty about how things work, and that accumulation has real value until the moment the river shifts and none of the frameworks apply anymore. Wisdom moves differently. It is less about what you hold and more about what you are willing to let go of. The wise person is not the one with the most refined answers. They are the one who has learned to sit inside a question long enough to feel what it is actually asking. The grammarian had accumulated decades of knowledge. The boatman had accumulated something quieter, something that cannot be stored in books or taught in a classroom. He had learned to read what was right in front of him, without needing to name it first. Think about how you actually think under pressure. Most of us treat the mind like a battlefield. We attack problems, eliminate uncertainty, force conclusions before they are ready. Wu Wei, the Taoist principle of effortless action, applied not to what you do, but to how you think, looks entirely different from that. It is not passive. It is not resignation. It is the mind that moves with a problem the way water moves around a stone, not forcing, not retreating, but flowing until the shape of the answer reveals itself naturally. Let that shift something in you right now. Here are 3 concrete practices you can begin today. The first, when you feel the urge to immediately Google an answer, pause for 60 seconds. Sit with the question. Let the discomfort of not knowing exist without immediately escaping it. You are training the muscle of presence. The second, once a week, walk somewhere without a destination. No route planned. No podcast in your ears. Allow the direction to emerge from what calls your attention. You are practicing the navigation of the empty boat. The third, when facing a major decision, write down your most certain answer. Then write 3 reasons it could be completely wrong. This is not pessimism. This is Wuzhu in practice, keeping the block uncarved, the path open, the mind available. Uncertainty is not a problem to solve. It is a space to inhabit. And inside that space, something quietly and steadily grows that no amount of anxious certainty could ever produce. In 1951, a British philosopher named Alan Watts published a small book that reads as if it were written this morning. He called it The Wisdom of Insecurity. Watts observed something that feels even more true today than the day he wrote it. He said that the root of our anxiety is not our circumstances. It is our compulsive insistence on making the future certain. We plan, we predict, we protect, and we prepare. And in doing all of this with such furious intensity, we completely miss the only moment that is actually real. He wrote, "The desire for security and the feeling of insecurity are the same thing." Read that again. Let it settle. The harder you grip the boat, the more you feel the current. The moment you release, you begin to float. Watts was not teaching recklessness. He was teaching something the Taoists knew millennia before him, that the mind at peace is not the mind that has found all the answers. It is the mind that has made peace with the questions. This is where the Grammarian, the empty boat, the uncarved block, and the wisdom of insecurity all arrive at the same shore. Not knowing is not the end of understanding. It is the beginning of a deeper kind. The river that reaches the sea is not the river that mapped every bend in advance. It is the river that trusted the pull beneath it and kept moving. If this journey has spoken to something real in you, stay a while longer on this channel. Taoist Diary exists for exactly this kind of quiet, radical shift in how you see your life. Subscribe if these reflections are the kind of company you want to keep. Because the path never asks you to have it all figured out. It only asks you to keep walking.